They say when a person dies, the loved ones will bury the person in a peaceful way. But in the case of Uncle Dan and Rita, things were different. From hammer to sword, with a heavy thunderstorms that can cut your heart. From Lagos to the village, from truth to lies. A terrible story was about to shake two worlds apart.
Do not even pretend to cry. We all the villager must force you to drink the water we used to bathe him.
Mike was a gentleman, kind, hard-working, honest. But he had an uncle in the village, Uncle Dan, a straight man, a man of truth, a man who feared no one. People said he was wicked, but they feared him only because he told the truth without shaking. When Rita visited the village for the first time, she noticed how people whispered when Uncle Dan passed. Right there, an evil idea entered her heart. She did not love her husband, Mike. She loved his money. So one night she traveled secretly to a voodoo man in an evil forest. Voodoo man, echoing voice. If you want him gone, I can do it. But after he dies, you must spend 7 days with me. If you refuse, the spirits will collect their debt. Rita smiled and agreed. Days later, Mike fell sick and died suddenly. The village cried, but Rita cried louder than everyone. She pointed her finger straight at Uncle Dan. Rita, "It was him, he killed my husband." The villagers believed her. Uncle Dan became an outcast. Children mocked him. Women avoided him. Men insulted him. Inside his small hut, he cried silently. How can I kill my brother's son? God, you see my heart. But truth does not die. The voodoo man began to haunt Rita. She refused to pay her spiritual debt. She ran mad in Lagos. Then one day she screamed into the sky and collapsed dead, right in the village square. Everyone froze. Their lies had finally returned to them.
Rita's shocking death in the village square, the story spread like wildfire. Lagos people whispered, villagers trembled, and even the chief priests said the spirits were not sleeping. But Uncle Dan, he became quieter than ever. He did not celebrate, he did not rejoice. He only said, when a tree falls, the forest must learn. Mike's body was brought back to the village for final burial. Rain poured heavily, as if the sky itself was crying. Villagers gathered, some ashamed, some confused, some praying quietly. Uncle Dan stood by the coffin, leaning on his wooden staff, his face hard but his eyes wet. I warned them, he whispered to the elders. But no one listens to the voice that speaks truth. Rita's lies and greed had covered his name like mud, but now the mud was washing away. While the village was still mourning, a stranger arrived, the same juju man from Ikorodu. He came with fear in his steps and guilt in his breath. He entered the palace square and knelt before the elders. Juju man, forgive me, he said. The woman forced me. She wanted her husband dead. She promised me wealth, but she broke the deal. The elders stared at him in shock. Women covered their mouths, whispering, so it was true. Rita killed her own husband. The juju man continued, I warned her. The spirits do not like unpaid debts. She refused to come for her 7 days. So the spirits followed her themselves. A heavy silence fell. Even the wind stopped blowing. Uncle Dan closed his eyes. Everything he suffered, all the insults, all the accusations, finally had meaning. The villagers decided that the only way to restore balance was to cleanse Uncle Dan's name publicly. They gathered in the village square with drums and palm wine. Elders placed chalk on his forehead and washed his feet. Women knelt and apologized. Children who once feared him now hugged him. Uncle Dan simply said, let your hearts learn before your mouths speak. For Mike's spirit visited at night. That night after the burial, Uncle Dan sat alone outside his hut. The moon was full, the air cold. Then he felt a gentle wind behind him. He turned, and there stood Mike's spirit. Calm, quiet, peaceful. Uncle, Mike said softly, Thank you for standing for truth. Do not carry guilt. The truth you lived has set my spirit free. Uncle Dan's heart broke in tears he had held for months. You forgive me, my son, he whispered. Mike smiled, a warm, glowing smile, and faded like morning fog. The next day, the elders gathered and said, "From today, no one will be judged by gossip in this village. Let truth be confirmed before tongues begin to wag." And so Uncle Dan became a symbol of wisdom. People came to him for advice. Children followed him around. The village learned patience, justice, and respect. Because of one man's suffering, a whole community became wiser. One early morning, as the Harmattan breeze touched the ground, Uncle Dan saw a young woman standing quietly near his compound. She wore simple clothes, but her face carried worry. "Papa Dan," she said, bowing, "my name is Adobe. I'm Mike's cousin from the city." Uncle Dan looked at her suspiciously. He had suffered too much to trust quickly. "What do you want?" he asked. She held out a brown envelope. "It is Mike's will. Before he died." The elders gathered. The envelope was opened. Inside was a letter written in Mike's handwriting. "If anything happens to me, let Uncle Dan handle all my property. He's the only one who fears God and truth." A second letter said, "If my wife Rita does anything suspicious, investigate her." The elders gasped. Everything was now clear. Uncle Dan dropped to his knees and cried silently. Not tears of pain, but tears of honor. But just when peace was returning, something strange happened. People in the village started hearing a woman crying at midnight. The sound was soft at first, then louder, then frightening. Some swore they saw a shadowy figure walking near the old market. Others said they heard footsteps behind them but saw no one. One night, 3 young boys ran to Uncle Dan's house in fear. "Papa Dan, Rita's spirit is walking. We saw her near the river." Uncle Dan lit his lantern calmly. "Fear does not solve a problem. Show me where you heard the cry." They took him to the riverbank. The moon reflected on the water. The wind was cold like ice. Then it came. A voice, a woman's voice, crying softly. Uncle Dan stepped forward, fearless. "If you are Rita, show yourself," he said. A wave of cold wind blew. The crying stopped. The river became calm. Then a whisper floated in the air. "Forgive me." Uncle Dan bowed his head. "But go in peace. Your sins have judged you already." The wind sighed, and everything became silent forever. Rita's restless spirit never appeared again. The final lesson. The next morning, Uncle Dan gathered the villagers and said, "Let this story live long in your hearts. Greed destroys. Lies scatter like smoke. Truth may be slow, but when truth arrives, even the dead bow." The people nodded. From that day, gossip stopped in the village. Judgment stopped. Fear stopped. And Uncle Dan lived the rest of his life as one of the most respected men the village ever knew. A symbol of truth, patience, and justice. Please share, comments, and like this post.